Welcome to the final A2 revision session. If this is the first time you're attending, my name's Aled Thomas. I'm a business studies teacher at Llynnoes High School. I've had about 11 years worth of experience teaching business studies. And what we've done so far is we've looked all the way through Unit 3 and we've looked about halfway through Unit 4. Now, the plan would be today to finish going through the content of Unit 4 and hopefully having a bit of time to run through some of the exam stuff as well. Okay, so let's try and crack on and go through some of this. Okay, so we were sort of halfway through the pest. Okay, so we've done political and economic. Okay, and now we're moving on to social and technological now. Okay, so like I said, we are looking at social. Okay, so what we're kind of looking at in this particular section is some key terms. Okay, so we're looking at demographic, we're looking at cultures, we're looking at lifestyles, we're looking at consumer tastes. Okay, and what those impacts are on businesses. Sorry. So these are some of the key terms involved in what we're looking at today. Okay. So looking at this one, what we've looked at so far is changes in the political environment, changes in the economic environment, and now we're looking at changes in the social environment too. Okay, so how these influence things. Okay, so some of the key factors is changes in demographics within the UK. Okay. And then some what are the social factors. Okay, so the demographics that we're talking about here is population, what the age structure is, how immigration, okay, is impacted the businesses, and how income levels have also influenced them. Okay, how change in taste, lifestyle changes and cultural changes have impacted. Okay, so demographic changes don't really happen overnight. Okay, so if you're looking at, say, the UK, for example, you probably see that the demographics change vastly over, well, since you know, post-war England. Okay, in terms of different kinds of cultures in there, the fact that the population has got a lot older. Okay, all right, and generally people have become richer too, but that again, that change hasn't happened overnight. Okay. And then looking at social changes, so consumer taste and lifestyle, how that has changed. So that has vastly changed over time. Okay, even in my lifetime. I know I'm 35, so think about how people go about shopping, how people go about their lives. Okay, so sort of things like health and wellness is really important to people. Okay, you know, if you look at, you know, how people socialize and interact with each other now, okay, it's now via sort of gym and running clubs, as opposed to maybe, you know, meeting in the pub after work every day. Okay, so the sort of the after work pint has now become the after work gym session or whatever, and that's where you'd meet and that's where you'd run into people. Okay. You've seen families change. Okay, so you've now sort of changed maybe that sort of traditional family unit of, you know, sort of parents, two children, what have you. Okay, well, you now see you know, substantially more single households. Okay, you now see the fact that more women are in work. You know, if you compared with sort of pre-Second World War and post-Second World War, for sure. Okay, the way people go about getting their goods and shopping. Okay, and how businesses have to adapt to that. Okay. So, you know, you've seen how, you know, where I live is in mid Wales, relatively middle of nowhere, and it's very difficult to get access to sort of retail stores to have a look at clothes and things like that. So you tend to buy and order more things online, but also businesses have had to become better at being able to sort of send those goods back, because they need sort of a way of convincing people to buy a lot online, try things on, send them back, and those facilities have to become much better within businesses. And to be honest, the businesses that aren't particularly good at it, okay, are going to get left behind. Okay, so I'll give you an example. Okay, so I wear a lot of hats. Okay, now I recently bought a couple of hats from New Era and a couple of hats from ASOS. Now, with the ASOS ones, I tried them on. I liked a couple, didn't like another. Just sent them back, real easy. Just went to drop them off at local spa shop, and it went straight back, nice and easy. So the way I shop is I would stick with ASOS. Whereas the New Era ones, one didn't really come in the colour that I wanted it to. So in order for me to send it back, I had to pay an additional £5. Well, that kind of process would put me off shopping with that brand. So really, New Era have to react to the social change of how people are shopping, and it has to be cheaper and it has to be easier, particularly if other brands are doing so. Okay, a lot more consumers have become a lot more environmentally conscious. Okay, and we'll touch upon a little bit about that later on. Okay. The definite culture changes, how people live their lives. Okay, and like I touched upon before, the growth of online purchases has also had an impact, which the online purchase aspect ties in relatively nice to the sort of technological aspect of the pest model as well. Okay, so various things we're looking at is automation, communication, disruptive technology, and even sort of some terms that you might not come across in this unit, but creative destruction. Okay, where us as a human race and as businesses, we are continually innovating and improving our lives and the products that we use. Okay, and that leads to disruption, and this leads to a destruction of some traditional or older industries. Okay, so you could probably consider landline telephones. Are they those have been disrupted, those have been destroyed by the increasing use of mobile phones, where a lot of houses don't have a landline phone anymore. So even though the same kind of businesses are creating mobile phones, there were maybe landline phones, though one industry has died, another one has come in its place. Okay, and I'm sure you can think of plenty of other examples. Okay. So how it's changed. So two key aspects, okay, is automation in terms of how products are made, okay, and then you've got communication, which is in terms of how people maybe communicate with each other and how businesses get access to sort of information and data and things like that. Okay, so some of the main changes we're talking about. Okay, so we look at automation, okay, and the impact that that has had. Okay, the automation of computer-aided manufacturing, robotics, okay, and what impact that has had. So we're talking about things like its impact upon employment. Okay, now the age-old argument is, has it created additional employment, more skilled employment, where people have to manage and fix these robotics, okay, or has it destroyed jobs, okay, or has it forced jobs to go elsewhere? Has it forced people to be more occupationally mobile and move into different industries? You think of a lot of traditional industries that used to be very labor intensive have now moved to be more capital intensive because of the rise in automation. Okay, you think about how retailers or warehousing, things like Amazon, how they have embraced brand new technology, and how they've used robotics within their warehousing to get goods to their customers. Okay, now they have kind of an integrated approach of they need labor to do various things, but they've also got a lot of smart machinery that helps them use things as well. Okay. Technology has most definitely impacted the 4 Ps: price, place, promotion, and product. Okay, so you're talking about how the product has been designed. Okay, so you're seeing impact in product. Okay, you're impacting the pricing strategy for sure. Okay, because if you remember back to your AS studies, okay, what you had cost-based pricing and you had competitive pricing. Okay, now traditionally, if you went back pre-internet days, a lot of businesses could operate as simply just cost-based pricing. They could figure out what a cost was, what their markup profit was, and set it at that, because the shops generally had more information than you did. Okay, so an example I always use is I grew up in a small town, Newtown. Okay, and there was only one sports shop in the whole town. Now, if I wanted to go and buy a tennis racket, I had to go to that shop. Now, what I could do is I could have driven to Shrewsbury, Telford, Chester, got to go to Cardiff, whatever, and looked at different shops with different tennis rackets, okay, to see what the rough cost was. Was I getting a good deal or not? Okay, but now I don't really have, but I wouldn't do that because I really wouldn't have the time, and it just, like, I wouldn't go around, particularly for that kind of thing. Okay, whereas I was probably paying over the odds for these tennis rackets because the person running the sports shop knew that I wasn't going to go and have a look anywhere else. Whereas now, it's, if you're going to buy any sort of serious purchase, anything say over £20–25, you're probably doing some sort of price comparison, and that's brought down the information asymmetry, where basically the consumers and the retailers have a similar amount of information about the price of things. Okay, all right. It's also impacted where they are selling their products. Okay, so traditionally maybe businesses would sell to wholesalers, sell to retailers, and that's how you would get access to your product, because you were going to physical locations to buy your goods. Whereas now the manufacturer can definitely, because of e-commerce and m-commerce, can directly reach their consumers. Okay, the way that businesses go about promoting their goods. Okay, they need to think about how they're spending their money wisely. Okay, so is there much point, say, spending a lot of money on TV advertising halfway through an England game, okay, or halfway through Coronation Street or whatever? Okay, that's going to cost you a lot of money. Or is it more cost effective to give a certain amount of money to a social media influencer who has 10, 11, 12, 20 million followers, okay, and that's your reach? Is a traditional kind of advertising like billboards, that's been changed by the use of social media. So that's how the 4 Ps have been impacted. Then you're talking about how market research has been impacted. Now, is the time spent on doing things like surveys worthwhile when you can gain access from, from cookies? Okay, data mining, using your management software, using your financial information, financial trends, and so on. Okay, so technology has had a huge impact in how businesses operate, and technology is probably a lot more dynamic than a factor than to compare with sort of the social environment of the pest analysis, because technology is always evolving, always changing. Okay, so we can definitely see that is quickly and fastly changing aspect of the pest. So we touched upon that. Okay, now we're moving on to the next section. Okay, we're looking at ethical, legal, and environmental factors. Okay, first one we're going to look at is environmental. Okay, so what kind of pollution are we talking about here? We're talking about noise pollution, climate change, congestion, stressing the environment, how businesses go about waste disposal. Okay, and we'll talk about a few of these in turn. Okay, now, what environmental costs are caused by business? Okay, we've touched upon those: pollution, climate change, deconstruction, congestion, waste disposal. Okay. Now, all of these have, they generate something called negative externalities. Okay. Now, when you're considering, say, any sort of project or any sort of business, okay, you all have private, the business, and you have private costs and private benefits. Okay, so if you are buying a product, okay, the cost to you is the money that you're sending over, but that creates a benefit for the business. Okay, the benefit, the business has their own private cost of sort of creating manufacturing a product. Okay, but then you get benefit of using the product. So that transaction basically only stays between you, the consumer, and the manufacturer. Okay, But then there's always these negative, the negative and positive externalities that are created by any particular transaction. Okay, so you simply by buying anything, be it from Amazon or you traveling to your local shopping center to buy something, okay, or something that you buy in the manufacturing process or whatever, there has been some sort of negative externality created. Okay, all right. So what businesses need to try and do is minimize these negative externalities as possible, okay, or try and counteract them by various things, like planting trees and all this sort of thing. Okay, all right. So on the next few slides, there are some examples that I'm going to pause on. Some I'm going to kind of skip over a little bit. Okay, all right. So some examples of air pollution and climate change. I feel like that one is quite a straightforward one that you could possibly explain and have plenty of examples of it. Okay, water pollution. Okay, and this is possibly tied into sort of waste disposal as well. Okay, and how that impacts businesses and consumers. Noise pollution. Now, this one is a very difficult one to measure. Now, if you were to consider something like the last two we've looked at, air pollution and water pollution, you can sort of see the argument of maybe putting some sort of monetary value on that. Whereas noise pollution, how do you measure the financial impact of noise pollution? Okay, because what you could do with some negative externalities is you could force businesses to reflect the full cost of their production. Okay, so it's not just the private cost to them, it's also the negative externalities that they create. Okay, so it's kind of tied to, if you think about the price of cigarettes. Okay, well, if you just sold a pack of cigarettes at the private cost the businesses incurred from it, okay, a pack of cigarettes would probably only be £1.50, £2. But the negative externalities from smoking in terms of the impact upon the health service, okay, secondhand smoking, okay, they believe that now what you're having to buy a pack of cigarettes for, be it 10, 11, 12 pound, I'm not really sure, okay, that is reflecting the full cost, the full social cost, the private cost and the external cost of that pack of cigarettes. Now, you could force businesses to reflect the full environmental cost in their prices, okay, but that would force prices of those goods up to you. Okay, congestion, again, difficult to put a sort of financial value upon congestion. Okay, but you definitely see, because there's an increase in delivering goods, is that creating more congestion on the roads, or is it better because people aren't visiting physical stores anymore? Okay. Waste disposal. Okay, this is a big one for a lot of businesses, particularly multinational businesses. Okay, now what a lot of multinational businesses do, which we'll touch upon a little bit, is they might flip from one country to another, try and take advantage of maybe looser tax laws, the fact that maybe they've got a weak government. Okay, and also they're trying to sort of find maybe the easiest place to do business, or where the rules are maybe more lax, for example. Okay, all right. I refer to that as something called race to the bottom, where they move around from one country to another. So if it's easier and cheaper to sort of dispose your waste in the local reservoir or whatever, some businesses may do that. It's going to really harm their reputation and so on. Okay, which kind of comes on to what we're going to do next. Okay, so some businesses may correct their behaviour, okay, simply based upon being worried about the sort of marketing impact of not being environmentally friendly, and we'll touch upon that a little bit in a couple of slides' time. But how can businesses be forced to control their environmental costs? Okay, they can impose taxes on them, impose laws on them. okay, which some are highlighted there: climate change levy, landfill tax, and so on. Okay, they can also force them to buy pollution well, they have pollution permits. Okay, so if they're only allowed to they're only permitted to pollute a certain amount. If they want to pollute any more, then they can buy other pollution permits from businesses. Okay, but that's going to be very expensive. Okay, and the fact that you can sell these pollution permits as well encourages businesses to be even more environmentally friendly. Okay, you can maybe impose some road pricing on businesses. Okay, but again, that might push up the cost, and that might impact your pocket. Okay, so how popular they would be is a difficult one. Okay, now, what you can do, there's been some success in the past, is certain groups, okay, can pressurize businesses into being more environmentally friendly. Okay, they can maybe organize consumer boycotts where people don't buy your goods. Okay, and that's tied into the next thing we're talking about, ethics as well. Okay, but in this age of also social media, okay, you've got businesses that are so in the age of social media, you've got people who are able to sort of quickly put stories up on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram of stories of businesses being not being environmentally friendly. So they may have some sort of environmental policy and so on. Okay, but they'll easily find examples of them not being so environmentally friendly. Okay. You can also put pressure upon government to impose some education in schools and discuss being environmentally friendly. So you're kind of hoping that as that population filters through, you've got more conscious consumers, and you've also got maybe more conscious business owners in the future. Okay. So ethics, okay, how this is going to impact it. Okay, so what are ethical issues? Okay, so things like animal rights, treatment of workers, treatment of customers. Okay, the fact that businesses need to have a corporate social responsibility policy now. Okay, all right. So setting the scene. On business ethics, but what we're really talking about is the right and wrong of doing something. Okay, so I'll give you an example of, say, child labor. Right now, in certain countries, it may be legal for you to employ children from the age of 12. Does it make it ethically right? Okay, so because of that, what a lot of businesses do is they set something called a corporate social responsibility policy. Okay, now this sort of outlines what the business is going to do in terms of its ethics, terms of its environmental agenda. Okay, and as often is probably what you're aiming for is definitely a level above of what is legal, more what it reflects what the business is going to do ethically. Okay, now CSR policies in the past have been criticized for maybe being a little bit done for the purposes of marketing, as opposed to something that can actually be is actually sort of used by the business. It's just sort of like a piece of paper to say we have this. Okay, we're all about being right, not testing on animals, blah blah blah, when actually it doesn't impact their day-to-day practice. Okay, now ethical issues, environmental issues, always going to have there's going to be clashes based upon the different stakeholders, and particularly certain stakeholders are always going to clash with shareholders. Okay, now because there is often a big conflict between being ethical and environmentally friendly and being profitable. For example, it could be a lot cheaper for you to dispose your waste into a local reservoir. It could be cheaper for you to employ children. Okay, and ultimately that would make you more profitable. However, is being ethical more important? Most probably yes. Okay, so legal, what we're looking at here. Okay, so we got the main aspects of the legal influences on business. Okay, so we've got, begin with company law. Okay, company law, we're talking about how the business is owned, the structure in terms of its liability. Okay, employment law, we're talking about things like health and safety, rights for the workers, anti-discrimination law. Okay, consumer protection. Okay, so product descriptions, labeling, returns. Okay, issues relating to credit and cooling off periods. Okay, laws relating to minimum wage, making sure that everyone in society has a national living wage that they can use. Okay, competition policy. Okay, so things like the Competition Markets Authority, they are going to make sure that competition is taking place, because we know that competition is good for us as consumers, because we get access to cheaper goods, okay, and products get innovated, okay, and essentially we do not, it reduces the ability of monopolies, which kind of goes against a little bit the next element of law. You've got intellectual property law, so you've got patents. Okay, patents are protect innovators, inventors, and means that they get they're protected for a certain amount of time, that they will be the only producer of or manufacturer of something that they've come up with. Now, this encourages innovation, okay, but there's an argument that it maybe discourages competition, okay, because what would be a good idea possibly is if you came up with a new invention, okay, someone was able to kind of go, all right, we're going to make this slightly better and release slightly better version, and then you would have this element of continued innovation. Okay, it also protects against trademarks. Okay, so we're looking at branding of logos, we're also looking at slogans. Okay, also protects against copyrights. Okay, so that protects more the kind of the creative industry, so artists, musicians, okay, and such things like that. Okay, all right. Okay, and then you've got things like data protection. Okay, with increasing e-commerce and m-commerce, we've got a lot of data filtering out there about people, so we need to make sure that that is protected. Okay, what impact does this have on stakeholders, on businesses? Okay, intellectual property laws can benefit consumers. Okay, invest in potentially new ideas, but maybe does it harm competition? Okay, protects creative individuals, and could potentially create employment. Employment laws are good because it's going to mean that hopefully more people are in work. Okay, protects employees in terms of their health and safety, that they're safe and they're getting paid a reasonable amount. Okay, going to motivate them because they feel they're safer in their job. Okay, but it potentially does add to businesses' cost. Consumer protection, okay, can mean that businesses face higher costs because they're having to change their labeling and things like that, okay, but it means that consumers are more likely to get access to higher quality goods. Okay, international trade. Okay, so we're moving on to sort of the last couple of aspects here. We're looking at globalization and international trade and globalization. Okay, so what we're looking at, what is international trade? How international trade has improved, what's free trade and protectionism, trading blocks and single markets, okay, all right, and why businesses face challenges when they're looking at developing into international markets. So there are various key terms on there for you to make sure you have a good knowledge of. So, but let's begin at the start. Okay, what international trade? What is it? Okay, it's basically, you've got import, the importing and exporting of goods. So importing is buying goods from abroad and exporting is selling goods to abroad. Okay. Exports can earn both money for the country and the business and can enter our circular flow of income. Imports can cost the country because you're essentially sending your money abroad and entering circular flow of money of another. Okay, however, international trade is a good thing because it allows countries and businesses to specialize. Okay, so an example would be, the growing of watermelons. Okay, now the climate in the UK does not lend itself to growing watermelons, does it? Okay. Now, if we wanted to produce watermelons, we would face difficulty because we wouldn't have the climate. We'd have to invest heavily in greenhouse equipment. Okay, and the resources in this country going towards growing watermelons would not be particularly efficient. Okay, so in actual fact, it's better that we stick to what we're good at, the skills that we have, the climate that leads to it. Okay, all right. And then sort of, let's say, Caribbean countries where they would have the climate to grow watermelons and maybe the better skills to grow watermelons, okay, and they sell us the watermelons, okay, and then we sell them goods that we have specialized in, okay. So I don't know what we're good at, cheese, biscuits, I don't know, something like that, okay. Now, one thing that impacts international trade is exchange rates, okay. Now, when a currency is strong, so let's say the pound is strong, okay, that means our goods seem more expensive to those people abroad. However, goods from abroad seem cheaper to us. Okay, so a strong pound means that we can often buy goods for maybe much cheaper because of the exchange rate. Now, if the value of the pound is weak, okay, what that means is our goods seem a lot cheaper to businesses abroad or people abroad, so they're more likely to maybe buy British, okay, but goods are more expensive for us to buy. Now, Britain, because of the structure of our economy in terms of our primary, secondary, and tertiary makeup, we have the vast majority of our people working in the tertiary sector, so we don't manufacture a lot. Okay, so we are we do import a lot of our goods. Okay, so it's something that we are, we deal with as a British economy. Okay, so why do businesses engage in international trade? Okay, so to get access to better quality or cheaper raw materials, to expand their customer base. Okay, so maybe they've got a saturated market at home, they want to sell abroad. Okay, maybe they want to gain economies of scale, the benefits of becoming larger. Why do countries trade with each other? Okay, so like touching upon what I said before, is some countries are good at making one thing, other countries are good at making other things. So it's better on using our resources as countries as efficiently as possible and specializing in making one thing. Okay, all right. There's also an element of international relations here. Okay, so if you are to create a trade deal with one country, then you're going to improve those relationships with each other, which is why international trade is kind of encouraged, particularly, with in the age of NATO, the UN, and this more international cooperation that you've seen since the Second World War. Okay. I know we might not be living in an especially peaceful time, but if you compare the time that we live in now to the rest of history, okay, sort of humans and societies have been going to war with each other pretty consistently, where we live in a relatively peaceful time. And, a contributing factor to that is international trade, because it's increased our understanding of each other, okay, and, the war with Russia, that, even though officially it's Ukraine that's backed in that, there's an element of an international war, because it's kind of like a trade war, isn't it? We've decided to cut off, international trade to Russia, and that's how we're fighting this war in particular. Okay, now what has driven international trade? Okay. Because of the internet, raising internet, consumers know more and they have higher expectations. Okay, there's been a lot more cooperation between countries and organizations. We talked about NATO, we talked about the UN, but then you've got big groups like the World Trade Organization, okay, that works to remove barriers, okay, remove trade barriers like tariffs and quotas, okay, try and discourages protectionism, encourages free trade. Okay, and then you've got sort of groups that work together, like NAFTA, the EU, the Southeast Asian nations. Okay, technological change. Okay, the fact that you've got a greater rise in e-commerce, people can now get access to goods from all over the world. Transport has become a lot cheaper. Okay, so if you were trying to ship something from the UK to South America back 100 years ago, it would have cost you a hell of a lot of money. The free trade is one of the main drivers. Okay, traditionally you have to pay an import tariff on any good that you bought from abroad. Okay, you also had certain countries had quotas on the amount of things that you could bring in. Now, what this does is essentially creates more goods to be more expensive for the consumers. Okay, and this leads to a less disposable income to maybe spend in your country. So I think countries now realise that imposing tariffs and quotas isn't really going to be beneficial for their overall economy, in the same way that protectionism isn't really going to benefit them either. Okay, now protectionism was kind of a policy pursued a lot by kind of fascist dictators, pre and post Second World War. Okay, and basically they felt that if you look at a country like Spain, for example, okay, they tried to encourage domestic consumption, and ultimately their nation wasn't as prosperous for it. They felt that if Spanish people were to buy Spanish, okay, essentially you would create this sort of self-sustaining economy. But we know now that all economies really are interdependent upon each other, okay, because we all it's an integrated global economy now where we all reliant upon certain countries to be specialist in certain things. So we need to trade. And engaging international trade and globalization sees a rise in living standards, a rise in access to goods, okay, and so on. That makes people a lot happier. Trading blocks, something that we've touched upon, okay, EU, European Free Trade Area, NAFTA, ASEAN, okay, these are groups that have no tariffs, no quotas, okay, and you can trade freely across these borders, okay. You've got single market and customs union. EU is an example of a single market and customs union. You also got the UK now, since leaving Brexit, trying to enter some sort of customs union, okay. Then you've got monetary union, single currency union, so you've got certain countries in the EU that have adopted the euro, okay, and you've got groups like the World Trade Organization that really try to encourage the existence of trade blocks and free trade, okay. Now, how that's impacted it. Now, there can be some benefits of businesses operating within the trade bloc, okay. So if you've got this, all these countries working together and there's free trade, it means that the companies can benefit because the argument is they've got far more customers, but potentially there is a drawback. It means that there is a lot more competitors, okay. So trading blocks can be good and bad for business, okay, but hopefully you as consumers will see the benefit of it, okay. Now let me think. Let's try and skip forward to globalization now, just in case we don't finish. Okay, so globalization. Now, there is a really good documentary on YouTube that I recommend that you check out on globalization. Okay, it is called Globalization is Good, and it's done by, I believe, a Swedish documentary maker called something like Johan Nordstrom, and it's a documentary for the for Channel 4, and it goes through the positive points of globalization, because often the headline of globalization it is a bad thing. Now, if you pursue any documentaries on globalization, okay, so there's documentaries called Fast Fashion on Amazon Prime or Netflix, I can't remember. Often what you get told about globalization is that it is exploiting workers and so on, okay, but globalization, there are many positives to it, and in my opinion does outweigh the negatives. Now, I'm not saying the path towards globalization is a good thing, and there are plenty of drawbacks to it, okay, and we'll touch upon some of those in a bit. But watch that documentary. It's a very good one, and helps you do this. And if you're sort of bored revising one night, it can definitely be something you can kind of switch on and just take some stuff in. So what is globalization? increase international trade between countries, increase migration, and basically sort of the integration of financial markets. Okay, now global market is a quote there, but basically it's the buying and selling of goods from all countries in the world. Okay, and businesses, some multinational businesses operate within a global market. Okay, now the good point of globalization is that it's going to increase living standards. It's going to improve the the local economy. It's going to probably make people richer. It's going to give access to better products for you as consumers. Okay, but there are certain drawbacks to it. Globalization is often called the Americanization. Okay, it is basically all countries just becoming like America or the Western world. Okay, there is going to be exploitation of workers. They are paid, maybe they're paid higher wages than they would be if those businesses weren't there, but those wages definitely aren't high compared to the West. Okay, their working conditions are going to be nowhere near the standards that they would be imposing maybe in in their Western factories. Okay, there is an element of these big multinational companies going into sort of smaller countries and taking advantage of taking advantage of taking advantage of weak governments in terms of maybe the taxes they pay, the rules they have to follow. Okay. Touch upon GDP there. I think we kind of know what GDP is. Okay, and we kind of touched upon really like a lot of positives and negatives of globalization. Okay, not really, unfortunately I've run out of time to sort of go through some of these. Okay, but globalization is a topic that's come up numerous times in GCSEs. You touch upon it a little bit in ASs, so just have a scan through it and I'm sure you will gain quite a good understanding of globalization. It's a fun topic and it's something you can really get your teeth into. Thanks very much for listening and tuning in, guys. I hope you've got something out of these revision sessions, and we've covered all the content that you wanted to cover.